hello to all of our listeners out there. This is Miguel from Nerdy Geek Talk, the source for all your nerdy geeky needs, here with a special episode of Steel City Bots. We're doing something a bit different with this episode, where we're doing kind of a combo of a specific topic along with an interview. So he's a YouTube content creator, a customizer, dabbling in 3D printing, and recently became a father. We have the one and only Lazy Eyebrow. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. We also have Zeus, who is the one who orchestrated this as our resident, what did I call you the other day? Plastic alchemist?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That sounds right. It was plastic alchemist, and then you said something else, but I can't remember what it was.
There was like toy warlock. That was another one.
Casting goblin.
You do weird things with the toys to make them either prettier or to melt them, as you like the wheeljack.
That was only the paint. I only melted the paint on that. Never
I feel like I'm mixing a bit of context on that, but okay. Never
use Krylon clear coat. It melts paint.
Oh yes, gross.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. So yeah, we are doing sort of an interview 3D printing discussion, but before any of that comes up, there was something that I wanted to mention just at the top of the show to get it out of the way. Lazy Eyebrow, I don't know if you remember this at all, but we actually have like a bit of history. I was the guy who on one of your live streams accidentally started the bagel joke.
That was you!
Yes, that was me.
That was you!
Yeah, I wanted to save the surprise for when we were actually recording, because Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, do you want to explain it, or should I go ahead?
Well, what was it? There was a live stream. I can't remember what the live stream was about.
I think it was when you were editing that.
Ratchet.
You were editing the intro. No, you were either editing the stop motion intro that you did, or just the transitions, the recreation. It was one of those two, but I can't remember which exactly.
Okay, that sounds about right, actually. Yeah, that's right. And then. I don't want to say who it was, but we got talking about a specific reviewer on the channel or on YouTube itself. And then I said, I don't want to say anything wrong about him, but blah, 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 blah. And then you came on and said that guy would review a bagel if he had the Hasbro name slapped on it. And I laughed, and then it just became...
It became the joke of that stream, and then it became like a running... And it became kind of a running joke going forward, to the point where at one point you actually did a review of a bagel.
That was actually like the... See, I don't know if you guys know who Cardboard Bots is, if he's like known on the podcast or whatnot, but he said he would do a review on a cereal box if I would do a review on a bagel. And he lived up to his end of the deal, and it was after I like quit the channel and whatnot, so I had to live up to my end of the bargain. And then that kind of sparked my, I missed this type thing. That's what actually brought me back to the channel. So you can thank the bagel. So, I mean, thank you.
Wow, I did not know I would play such a big role in bringing you back. You're welcome, I guess. And that also answers one of the questions that we had later in this, which was going to be what kind of made you decide to come back.
We can get into more in depth later than that.
Sure. But I made you realize something. You made me realize something. That's cool. That was a great moment to have there.
I didn't know that Zeus spawned a meme. That's interesting.
I spawned a meme on accident because I've actually enjoyed Lazy Eyebrow's content for like a few years now. He does like some really interesting stuff. I don't know how much of our like audience kind of intersects with his, but what he does is he does like stop motion reviews, which I've personally always thought was great, because like the whole idea of a hands-free review really appeals to me as someone who likes seeing how things are transformed. Because, without having someone's hands in the way, you can see a lot more of what's going on and get a better feel of what the toy does.
Absolutely.
I was also going to mention that because in preparation for this, I was watching a few of your videos, and because honestly, I hadn't come across them before. And one of the things that struck me, specifically in the Wheeljack review, just with the stop motion and then the voiceover, how clear it is to see the transformation and everything and going to your review style, some of the details that you pointed out either before or after repainting the figure caught my eye because I was just seeing some of the things that I hadn't come across before, especially with Wheeljack. The fact that the stock paint cuts off the window and how it's not fully painted. That was something I was like, oh, I never noticed that before.
One of my personal favorite examples, it's another recent one, was that whole long gushing that you went on about with the brakes on Cliff Jumper. That's something that me, knowing like nothing about cars, I never would have noticed. But like you going so in depth about it and getting so excited, that made me excited about a detail that I like completely would have overlooked.
It's funny that you mentioned that, and I hope I'm not going too off topic here, but the whole brake thing, you're not the only one that was like that. There's a few people, in fact, my gushing about the brakes helped influence the Toy Hack set coming out soon.
That's impressive, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, there's like little things that I wouldn't know about as someone who's not really a car enthusiast, but that you do notice, and like even regular details that aren't necessarily related to the cars that I wouldn't have picked up on. And it's really cool being able to see that. And again, not really having someone's big hands in the way impeding your vision at all.
And not to knock those people that do have their big hands in the way, because I mean, like
that's absolutely
that's
fair, because you can with those you can kind of get a feeling for like how it's going to feel in hand. But as someone who's more concerned with like engineering and transformation, me personally, I like being able to see more of the toy. You know? Yeah.
Well, to be perfectly candid, if I'm in the middle of a review and I want to know something specific, I will like look up MGO or something and just kind of get a feel of, is there anything I missed in the review type thing?
Yeah. No, I do that a lot of the times with figures that I have, is especially beforehand, I look up a lot of reviews to get a feel of what people like about it and different things that people pick up on. You know, that's always how I've been. And I'll definitely go back even after I picked up a figure just to see if there are details that other people have found that I've missed.
It also helps us with having sort of a crowdsourcing, especially I always think too when Masterpiece figures are released. Those first 2 weeks of like a discovery period, even before the video reviews come out, or even when the video review finally comes out, and you can kind of connect, like if you're reading a message board and trying to figure out, okay, what are areas to watch out for, things to make sure you don't scrape a piece, or if you pull on something when you should push it instead or something.
That's something else too, is like on my personal copy, say I had MP44, which I don't, but like say my copy didn't have the knee problem, that's good to know if someone else had it so you can mention it in a video.
Right.
Yeah. So there's definitely use to watching a lot of different reviewers, especially depending on what you're looking for. And you offer something that I've seen with only like a couple other reviewers where you are like completely hands-free and basically are just showcasing the figure on its own. Very much something that I like seeing and that I would definitely not mind seeing more of in the future of the like Transformers reviewing YouTube community.
Thankfully, like I've seen a few, and some of them have even been inspired by my work. Like I said, Cardboard Bots is a big one.
Yeah, I like his work too. He doesn't upload like super often, but I do like the way that his stuff looks. He has some really cool looking lighting.
Yeah, it's more of a warm thing, and the aesthetic is really cool.
Since we're on the topic of YouTube and your YouTube channel, we can go through a few more of the YouTube related questions.
Well, yeah, I think just to start off, back up a little bit here, what exactly made you start doing YouTube videos and whatnot?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
I mean,
we got time, right?
Okay, so I have always been into stop motion. When I was a kid, say about 10 or so, it would have been like 2001-ish, Lego had released a set that was just like a camera that could plug into actual bricks and whatnot. And it was like a Steven Spielberg set that was geared towards you can take pictures and make scenes, and it came with a Godzilla foot and a Godzilla miniature, and you could make videos and whatnot. And I was fascinated.
I remember seeing that one in the they had the visual dictionary from years ago. I remembered seeing that set and thinking that was like the coolest thing.
Oh, absolutely. I wish I had it, but my parents weren't the most well off, so I unfortunately we never got it, which, I mean, whatever. But like I used to look at that advertisement that came in my Obi-Wan set and just look at it and imagine what I would do with it and the things I used to do. Like I used to be huge into Star Trek, and there's a hologram character, and like, okay, well, I'd take a picture and then not take a picture, and then in the editor kind of flicker it type thing to make it look like he was destabilizing. It's just stuff like that I'd think about when I was 10, 11, and 12 and whatever. In high school, I took media arts, so it kind of taught all the ways to edit video and whatnot and how to go about doing it. It taught about video production and everything. And so one of the units was we spent about 2 months learning how to stop motion ourselves. And one of the projects I did was some guy running in and out of lockers, Scooby-Doo style. So anyways, that was 2007. Fast forward to 2011, I was getting into Transformers a lot around that time, and my friend was doing just normal reviews, kind of in the style that Vangelis does, where it's not so much hands-on, but like a bit of mix of good photography and whatnot. And most of the reviews I'd seen were like, your standard hands-on type thing, and I was okay with that, but I wanted something different. My friend, he found a guy that was working for TF Source. He did about 20 reviews, and he found one on MPO1 that he was considered buying at the time that was fully stop motion, and I was floored. And I think I spent 2 nights just watching every single review he did. And then I found the end of those videos and was really sad. And about a year later, I was like, I want to see more of these, and there are no more of these. I should just make them. So if you've ever seen the TF Source reviews, they're very dry, they're very factual, and they're professional looking, which is, it was fine. But if you look at my reviews, you'll see a lot in the Astrotrain, the first one. It's very dry, it's very by the book, and that's where I was emulating that kind of style. The second one was was it Ultra Magnus or was it Soundwave? I can't remember. Anyways, I did 5 reviews, all of them G1 figures. And the second one was Jazz. Again, it was dry. The third one was Ultra Magnus. That one was a little more humor. Soundwave was the next one, all G1 figures. And then when Optimus hit, I kind of ditched the whole seriousness of it and just had fun with the trailer. And that was the first skit I did, was that just Optimus going through and blasting things, and then the guy dies at the end and he runs off at the end. And I just had so much fun doing that. I just decided to do my own style from then on. And that's where we are today.
Yeah, and you have developed a kind of interesting sense of humor. Like, a lot of your gags are very visual, which being stop motion makes sense. And
absolutely.
It's a lot of fun watching your videos, especially the, the overdoses?
I've changed the name to Overload just because of YouTube algorithms and whatnot. I don't want to get tagged by drug and whatnot. So
they are very funny and very entertaining in their own right.
Well, thank you.
I guess just going off of that, where do you draw a lot of your sense of humor from?
So about half the jokes come from my head at like 3 a.m. I'll have a sleepless night and I'm just kind of tossing and turning in bed, and my mind will start, I have severe ADD, and some days it's worse than others.
I feel you on that. I've got ADD, and I sleeping is hard sometimes with that.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you on that. But for instance, one of my big ones that everyone keeps commenting on, even years later, is the one where Optimus transforms and the trailer traverses time and space to get to him. That one was just, I used to be a dishwasher, back in 2012, and I was just washing dishes, and it's such a mindless task that my mind ends up wandering. And I can't remember what exactly spawned it, but I thought of it, and I immediately stopped and burst out laughing, in front of a huge dishwasher, and 3 of the cooks looked over and yo, you okay there, buddy? Yeah, no, I'm good, don't mind me. But so about half the humor comes from just my own screwed up head. Maybe 25% comes from me watching something and laughing and then thinking that'd be hilarious if, say, Optimus was doing it instead of whoever it is I'm watching. And then the other 25%, I'll just be bouncing off ideas with my wife or with my friend back in BC who helped me start the channel. He goes by Movie Space Jump. I've talked about him a few times on the channel. But so it's a mix of quite a few people. And not even that, but X Eagle 1 as well. He's another guy I talk about quite frequently. He was the one I was doing Cartoon Carpool with. So there's about 4 people, myself included, that help inspire the ideas.
And is there any kind of media that you consume that you would say maybe influences your sense of humor too?
I mean, stuff I grew up watching, I guess. I mean, I used to watch a lot of Animaniacs and stuff, and what else? Freakazoid, and that was a huge.
Yeah,
I went back and watched it recently, and that's all they do is like half the time they just.
it's this odd. Yeah, it's this odd combination of like sight gags and.
Yeah,
Like,
I was watching it
wordplay.
behind the scenes with the creators of Freakazoid, and it's basically like if they were laughing, they didn't care if it made sense. They just threw it in because that was their whole goal, was to make people laugh.
Yeah, that's definitely, that does make sense hearing it out loud now.
Yeah, well, that and like, I mean, I don't watch. I used to when I was a lot younger, but like Family Guy, for instance, with their cutaway jokes, like that kind of style, I guess you could say influences.
A lot of your videos were, or I guess still are, because some of the recent ones. So stop motion, skit based, and then you also have the customizing aspect of it, where like
Yes.
I mentioned before, the Wheeljack video, you go through the reasons why you don't particularly like the stock deco, and then the things you did to try to elevate it. So just
And that's a bit of a Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You can ask your question.
well, no, just kind of getting a bit more into that, the like starting out customizing your figures and everything, because I'm trying to get us closer to the 3D printing thing, because we mentioned that at the top of the show. But,
Yes. Yes, we did.
So yeah, just talk a bit about that, or whatever you were going to mention.
Well, it's a bit of a controversial aspect on the channel because a good majority like it, but there's a good chunk of people that are upset, if you will, that it's not like they come to a review expecting to see what the figure, and what they get is a painted figure, a custom. It's not what they're going to go out and buy type thing. But I mean, I still do it anyway because this is what I want to do. This is what I want it to look like. And half the reason I do the customizing in the video is be like, this is what yours could look like too.
Right.
Yeah, I've always felt very strongly that people should be allowed to put out what they want, that you kind of have to meet.
Mainly the philosophy I've had since the start is I've just been making content that I personally would like to see. If I wouldn't watch it, I won't make it.
And that's a good philosophy to have, because there are a lot of people who, you know, they'll start out their careers or their channels doing something that they have like a mild interest in, and then get kind of like pigeonholed into doing that when they want to maybe like grow beyond that or expand the type of content that they do. You know, it's good to achieve a balance.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, what was your original question? I can't remember if I answered.
No. I was just saying, going into like the customizing thing. The thing I wanted to, which I was trying to circle back to.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. No, like the whole thing with like choosing to, because I thought that was really Zeus was actually like saying like, oh, I was chatting with Lazy Eyebrow and everything, and like bring him onto the show, and I was like, well, I haven't heard of his stuff before. Let me check it out. And that was one of the things that I thought was really refreshing, especially because with so many different YouTubers out there who do Transformers reviews and everything, each one kind of brings their own personal style. And if your hang up is like, oh, well, he's not showing what the figure looks like out of the box, it's like there's almost too much content that can cover that. So you can kind of like just diversify what you're looking for, because also it's not so much a source of information. Sometimes the reviewer's style, the comedy, like we were saying before, or even this little skits, all of that kind of goes into why you enjoy watching a certain creator. So just the whole thing of personal style and everything. And then
it definitely feels like in some aspects the review format that a lot of people are looking for is very limiting, where they want like just an informational look at the figure rather than, you know, what someone thinks that a figure could end up being. And that's one of the things I appreciate about your channel, is that you're willing to forgo that whole concept of I need to show off this figure as it is rather than showing it off how I want it to be.
Well, regarding that, I've kind of come with a compromise where I'll start before I even start customizing now, I'll take a few, say, stock photos, if you will, just to be like, there, this is what you get out of the box. Now shut up.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair compromise, because the people who want to see just the vanilla toy, they still get that, and the people like me who enjoy seeing what you do with it and what ends up happening with new paint schemes or just stuff that you add on, especially now that you're getting into the 3D printing, we still get that. Yeah. And I do think that's probably like the best way to balance the two.
For the people who are too lazy to open a tab and Google, what does Siege Wheel or Earthrise Wheeljack look like out of the box?
Yeah. Since to kind of steer the conversation toward 3D printing, I'm very curious as to how the Earthrise Prime review is going to go. I'm currently filming it, and I did a huge modification where I completely cut the exhaust stacks off and 3D printed new ones. And I mean, it looks. I think it looks good, but
that sounds very exciting. That's a lot more exciting than some of the stuff I've been looking into trying to do, even because most of mine is just like, okay, here's this existing port. What can I do with it to add on to it? Or if I pop out this pin, what can I replace it with?
That's a huge thing that I do as well. But this was one of the things where it was like the way it's designed, there was no possible way where I could make it look good. So I ended up just taking a Dremel to it and cutting it off entirely and then making new ones dedicated to go in that spot.
Yeah, and that's been one of my issues with Earthrise, just as like someone who likes to get into the customizing. It's a lot harder to do now since they've replaced most of their screws with pins, a lot of stuff.
Oh, I know.
And not even like the kind of pins that are easy to knock out. It's the flathead pins, which unless you have a soldering iron that actually works and you're not scared that you might accidentally melt your figure, you're basically screwed.
I have to think that that's almost on purpose.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it to try to, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but to try to try to limit, to deter third-party companies from making upgrade kits.
Well, you know what? I hadn't even thought of that.
I mean, it's a variety of things. Deter people from producing kits, whether it be third-party companies or people just doing Shapeways stuff and whatnot. Also, just limiting people's ability to fix their toys if they're broken. Because you see a lot of times things, I feel like over time, have moved to a place where we're not really going to let the consumer kind of get under the hood and fix the thing. It's like, oh, it's broke, buy a new one.
Yeah, I've seen that, but at that same time, I'm not sure if that theory holds water, because Hasbro's the kind of people where if you still have the box and receipt and you give them a shout, they will happily replace it for you.
Which is true. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm assuming you mean less immediate, like less immediate damage, like something that happens over a few years where it breaks. They don't want you to try to get in there and fix it. They want you to buy their new product, which is kind of something that's been happening. I'm sorry?
No, that's another angle to look at it. I mean, this is just like coming up with like crackpot theories.
It's not necessarily crackpot though, because that's kind of the direction that a lot of companies have been moving in, especially like electronics and car companies, where they'll make it harder for you to get replacement parts to fix your cars or fix your phones or whatever, so that when the new one comes out, you're almost obligated to buy it.
Right, but then again, it's like, how much is Hasbro actually like thinking on that front? But who knows?
I know. I'm just putting it out there that there is actual evidence to back up that theory. It's not necessarily like a crackpot theory.
I meant more for toys than anything. But so then dialing back a little bit, because you mentioned like looking at like Earthrise Prime, doing new smokestacks, figuring out stuff. So I guess on both like customizing your figures, but also 3D printing, like how exactly did that all start out?
Actually, it started out with not Transformers, and then I thought about the application. Another one of my hobbies is model railroading. I've been into that since I was 5, and about 2 years ago, I picked up a set that was modeled after the French TGV train from the 70s. I got it for $30 when it should have been $250, but the caveat was it had been dropped down the stairs a few times, and then someone cobbled it back together and then sold it. So a few months ago, I tore it apart and was trying to fix it, and that's actually how I've injured my finger recently, was just doing something stupid with a knife. Was working on that specific train. But one of the things was there's a few details that were missing, and I was thinking how great it would be if I could just print it and stuff. And so that kind of got the initial thought in my head to investigate 3D printing. I have a friend back in British Columbia who had just picked up one, specifically actually the one that I recently bought. I bought the same one. But I started talking to him. He gave me some tips and advice and how it works and whatnot. And so it's like, okay, maybe I should start looking into that. And then I have a Patreon for the channel that's, I haven't really advertised too much because I haven't really been doing much for the channel up until recently. So I don't feel morally okay with just accepting money, but people say I should do it, so I put it out there, and let it do its own thing. And then I found out that the amount that was sitting in there was just over the amount needed to buy a 3D printer. So I figured, well, it's for the channel, and that would be a great place for that funding to go to. So I did a little more research and decided to get the 3D printer, and I've been really enjoying it. It's made quite a few upgrades to quite a few figures so far.
What printer is it that you use?
I use an Ender 3. It's the X version, but it's by Creality. But the difference between this one and the normal one is it comes with a tempered glass bed, and I think the extruder is aluminum as opposed to plastic, so it's less likely to snap.
Yeah. I've worked a lot with filament printers before just because we had a couple in high school, but the one that I've recently bought, the Photon Zero, or I didn't buy it, it was a gift, but the Photon Zero is a resin printer, which is like a very different process.
I've heard
I don't know
of
if
that.
you know. I don't know how much you know about resin printers because it's.
I know pretty much, like, this is all, let's see, I've had it now for 3.5 weeks, so this is entirely my knowledge about 3D printing is in the last, say, 5 weeks.
This is the example that I've brought up like a few times, and it has in very few examples helped me. But have you watched any of the show Westworld?
No.
Oh, yeah, that's usually the answer I get. Have you seen? Okay, well then, off of that, have you seen any of the trailers or just
No.
the ads? Okay,
Sorry.
that's fine.
I live under a rock sometimes.
That's absolutely fine.
I mean,
I don't talk to that many people who.
Westworld's on HBO, right? So it's a
Yeah,
premium
it's HBO,
service
so
and
it's-
everything.
Oh,
So
that's why I know nothing about it.
Yeah, that would be why. I know. Not yeah, but
I have Netflix,
I guess for those of you
Disney
who
Plus,
don't.
and that's it.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, which I guess means you and also Miguel, because I know you haven't watched it.
yeah, and for the
there's-
listeners out there who might not know,
In Westworld, the way that they create their hosts, which are essentially the robots that operate within the park, is there's this huge vat of what looks in most cases like heavy cream, like in most shots, and there's this apparatus in it that kind of rises out with a fully formed animatronic in the middle made out of just this like white material. And that's kind of like what a resin printer is that, but on a micro scale.
I saw a video about that, but I didn't know what it was. I just saw it rising out of a vat.
Yeah, it essentially what a resin printer is with mine is you have like this little, it's not even like a big vat, it's just like a little tray of a liquid. It's called like a photopolymer resin.
Okay.
The bottom, it's got a clear bottom, and underneath the bed there's a UV light. And so the UV essentially cures the resin as it rises out of the vat, and the bed comes off completely separate with a piece attached to it, and it, in most cases, it prints out upside down. It's very interesting.
Okay.
Not a lot of people know about this. I didn't even know that resin printers were a thing until like last month. So
Well, it's funny that you're mentioning all this because I guess I've seen resin printers, a few of them in different videos about 3D printing and techniques and whatever, but I didn't know what that was.
yeah, no, and they're very interesting. What I like about them a lot, as opposed to just the standard filament extruding printers, is that they're smooth. You don't get as much of like the seam lines from when you build up the different layers of filament, unless it's actually like built into the design. For the most part, you get a smooth surface. Like I know no one listening is going to be able to see, but I'm just going to real quick turn my camera on. This is, here we go. This is a failed print that I had because it just kind of bowed up a bit. But this part here, just I don't know how well it's coming across, but it's completely smooth. There's like no mold lines on it at all.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that this technology I didn't know existed works, and it works a lot like in a very different way from the printers that I've used in the past. So I've been trying not to use it a lot because I don't like working with resin too often. Mostly just the smell is kind of noxious and it's difficult to handle. You have to wear gloves. It gets really messy. So I only print maybe like once every other week now, just to keep myself inhaling too many fumes, essentially.
Fair enough.
But the stuff that it prints out is like a really nice quality.
No, I mean, from what I've heard people tell me about it, it's a really nice way to go about it. I'm, I don't know much about it, so I don't know what like the quality of I guess the density is like. But I'm a noob to this whole thing.
No, I'm very much a newcomer to resin printing, but the stuff that I have is like fairly dense. I think it's like full layers instead of. I know a lot of filament printers. There's just like filler, essentially. Just, like supports on the inside instead of being like a full solid piece for like the bigger parts. Like I can't remember the term. There's some art. It's like something in architecture where it's like a support. I guess like a support beam. They have kind of like the or no, it's like on a bridge when they have like the cross thing going. I'm not explaining this well, but I feel like people who know enough about printing know what I'm talking about. Where it's not really a solid piece. It's a hollow piece with like a kind of a filler running through it. Infill, thank you.
If we're in the process of sharing pictures, I again, I know the audio or people can't see it, but here, this is the smokestacks I did for Optimus Prime.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Do you model the pieces yourself and everything, or?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because that was my next question, and that's the perfect opportunity to ask that.
There's a segue. In high school, I took 2 semesters of 3D animating.
Okay.
I wasn't very good at the whole animation aspect. In fact, on my first channel, there's a stupid little animation of Optimus versus Soundwave where Optimus tricks Soundwave into a transforming contest and Soundwave wins, but the real contest is Soundwave turns into a tape player and Optimus just ran him over. But it was grade 12. It was a long time ago. Anyways, so I've got a lot of experience with Autodesk's 3ds Max and how that operates. So when I got the printer and heard that it runs on Blender and whatnot, not Blender, STL files, and Blender can do STLs and they're free, I went to that program and spent about 2 weeks learning the new interface. And from there, like, I'm getting better at it as my prints are showing off, I hope. But yeah, everything I've made so far, except for a few exceptions. For instance, I made an NES Zapper for the Autobots that was just taken off of Thingiverse and resized and added a 5mm pin to that. But for the most part, everything has been modeled on my own.
Right. I was curious about that just because like in a lot of the stuff you've mentioned, like, oh, you're new to 3D printing, but then I saw the Megatron Fusion Cannon, for example, and
that Fusion Cannon looks incredible. By the way.
Oh, thank you.
And that was the one thing I'll say is the reason, especially that I'm like, oh, I need that Fusion Cannon is I think you mentioned that it's modeled somewhat off of the MP36 Fusion Cannon.
Yeah.
Right? And you got the button that's on the end of the Fusion Cannon. There's that on the Masterpiece. It's a little red button, but you can kind of see, unless I was like just hallucinating. It seems like
it's like a little nub,
right? And that's a detail for whatever reason that I always focus on whenever someone does a Megatron Fusion Cannon. It's like, do you have the nub? Because if you don't have the nub, it's not right. It was the thing when those first pictures of MP36 came out, and people were like, we don't know if this is official or not. I'm like, it's got the nub. No one but Takara Tomy would remember that a nub is on the back of that cannon.
Yeah, Miguel's very much detail oriented.
Fair enough.
To a fault.
Eric is to the point where like you've not bought stuff before because there was like a minor flaw in the print in the painting.
I can honestly relate sometimes. There's certain things where it's like, no, this is a write-off because this wheel's backwards or something.
It's something that I always look for, especially if I'm have the opportunity to pick up a figure in person. I look it over to make sure, okay, is the paint good? Are there any little notable defects or whatever that I can notice? And I have, like, specifically, it's at the bare minimum, is the face okay? Because the paint on the face is the one place where if, like, something's chipped off of the nose or something, I can't forget it.
And like Eric has told me before that a couple times in dealer rooms he's handed stuff to you and just said, Miguel, scan. Because he needed to know if there was anything like wrong with it.
Plenty of TF cons when we're all like we've been able to meet up and go through the dealer room. People hand me figures like, can you figure out if anything's wrong with it? And I'm like, I'll either say yep, it's fine, or I remember someone had a Prime First Edition bulkhead and it was the only one that I could find in the dealer room. And I was looking it over, and it was in vehicle mode, and I'm like, okay, it looks fine. But then it was loose, so I asked, can I transform it? Or could you transform it just to see the robot mode? And the guy did it, and once he did, I noticed that on his chest, one of the doors was missing a paint app.
Oh, no.
I was upset, because I was like, I would have bought this because it's such a good price, but it's missing this detail on the doors missing. And the guy looked at me like, really? You're not going to buy it because it's missing some paint? I'm like, well, yeah.
I'm a collector.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna like if it was like a little nick or something, it's like okay, I have paints at home, I can fix that up. But it's like okay,
Yeah.
a whole paint application's missing. No.
And that's one of the reasons that I don't like buying stuff if I can't see it at least through a window. Because the other day I got in the Iron Factory War Giant Catastrophe set, which is their Baldigus, which is a beautiful set, but the thing is, mine came with like the roll bar. He's actually missing a whole paint app on one of his feet. Like that's supposed to be painted gunmetal, but there's just no gunmetal there. And I wouldn't have known that because first of all, I had to order it online, and second, it's in a completely sealed box.
I mean, at the very least, that's the detail you showed is very small. So, and I know for a fact you have gunmetal paint. So
I do have gunmetal paint. I painted that whole trailer.
Yeah, you can. It's something that if you are someone who's at least past the point of being scared to take paint to your figures, you can kind of fix that up.
Yeah.
But then I know plenty of people who don't like having their figures not be stock. They want it to be as close to whatever it is that they bought as possible. And then also like on some ends, like certain toys you expect, especially like I think masterpieces, because I used to really be into...
masterpieces are a huge thing for me.
I used to be really into masterpieces. Like in college, I sold everything that was sort of generation scale and started picking up masterpieces. I'm like, it's slower, but I get better figures, and it like 1 or 2 figures a year, it's fine. And then as a masterpiece started going more toward the G1 cartoon aesthetic, that's also where a lot of the quality control seemed to dip. Like I remember Ironhide and Ratchet. The whole thing with like, oh yeah, if you don't apply a clear coat to their chrome, it'll just evaporate. Same with Hot Rod.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that for a time I was doing because I'm like, okay, I kind of do some stuff. I was doing some customizing and stuff on the side. So I'm like, okay, I can tend to my figures, but they got to a point where I was like, am I gonna have to do this with every figure that's like $80 to $100, $150? Like this is getting a bit ridiculous.
Like I think MP44 is a prime example. No pun intended. But you're spending upwards of $600. It's even more so in Canadian. It equates to like $750 or something like that. And the white waste paint, you transform it once and it's all chipped away.
The waste paint, I'm sure some of the paint on the... Because I'm pretty sure his whole upper body's painted on top of the red plastic, so you have stuff there that could flake off. He's got...
Which is something I personally never got, was if you're going to have the red plastic, why paint on top of it? But I guess some people see that as a mark of quality.
Well, yeah, if it's bare plastic, it's not premium. To be premium, it needs to be painted over the same color of plastic. It needs to be able to dab, and it needs to have ankle toes.
And it needs to chip away at the slightest movement of the hinge.
Well, no, that's a I mean, tons of toys. I mean, like it's interesting just because like some toys part of me always feels like stress marks and everything seem to be really prevalent on modern toys, but there have been older toys that I've gone back to and I'm like, oh no, this thing, once you transform it, there are some stress marks that don't seem to disappear. Oh god, who was it? Beast Wars Quick Strike is a good example. It seems like everyone I've ever come across, his scorpion legs have stress marks, and there's seems to be no getting around that.
No, stress marks are something that are kind of hard to get around. I was more talking about like just paint chipping in general.
Well, I'm just saying some defects and whatnot, but
yeah.
Going back to the you were talking about the nub on the fusion cannon and whatnot. I think a lot of that comes from the model railroading aspect of my hobby skill set, I guess. I don't know. So when I made that, I went back to my MP36 review and took every image I had and looked at it from every single angle. Looked to the proportions where I bought a set of digital calipers, measured the Siege Megatron, so did the whole scaling and the proportions on what that should look like.
Oh, wow.
And then every single detail that I saw on MP36, I modeled into the fusion cannon for Siege Megatron. So, like, for instance, I think there was 3 or 4 out there that were like on Thingiverse or Shapeways or something. And like, for instance, a lot of them right where, like, if you're looking at an eyepiece thing, right where you put your eye, that the thickest part should be ridged. Like it should have kind of like the indentation into that. And a lot of people just had that smooth, and that personally bothered me.
That would bother me too.
Like what I would do in Blender, I think I had it at like a really high poly count for the cylinder. I think I upped it to like 80 or something, and then I subdivided that, and then every other vertice line I would select that, and then I just ballooned it out to make that ridged look, along with a bunch of other little details, including that nub that I mean, if it was on the original, it's got to be there.
Right. No, that's really cool though. Like just the I guess combination of both your model railroading and then doing the animation stuff in high school. That's really cool. That's a lot of the time, like in college, I was around a lot of people who were in an animation program, and they ended up having the 3D printer that the university had. So a lot of them started to kind of dabble in 3D printing, and it was something that I always was like, that'd be really cool to then help sort of augment my Transformers stuff. But then like that barrier of like learning how to 3D model has always been the thing. And like, as much as like it's like Thingiverse and everything, like getting the STL files, being able to do it myself, especially like in this instance where it's like, oh well, all the fusion cannons are missing details, I'd be in that similar situation. I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah. And that's, well, I mean, the channel was built around that philosophy of I don't see it, so I'm going to make it.
Right. So it all comes full circle.
Yeah, these 3D printing things is the exact same thing. I don't see it anywhere. I can't buy it anywhere. Forget it. I'm just going to make it.
That's really cool.
That's the kind of thing that I want to do, except that I still need to learn just general 3D modeling. Because I took a computer class in high school that was supposed to be just kind of like general computer stuff, but the teacher wanted us to try to get into 3D modeling just because he had the printer and I could never figure out the program.
Well, that's the great thing about Blender is because it's open source. There's just so many tutorials. I can't remember who it was, but someone did. I think his name's Blender Guru. But anyways, he did a 9-part tutorial on how to build an IKEA chair from scratch.
Oh, that's the series you sent me. I can actually look that up real quick. Just gotta scroll back through our messages.
Okay, that's what I like about Blender. It's just that it is open source. Therefore, it's open to anybody, and therefore anybody can make a tutorial. So if anybody is skilled enough, they're happy to make a tutorial. So it's very easy to learn Blender, and a lot of what I do is just simple shapes. I'm nowhere near into advanced stuff. Like my biggest tool set right now is Boolean, and then just vertex editing and knowing just spatial dimensions. So like I said, I got the digital calipers, so I'll measure the pins and like, okay, it's 5 millimeters, so I know the 3D printer is not exactly accurate, so I'll up it to 5.05 millimeters, and that fits perfect. And just little things like that, where it's part knowing how to 3D animate or 3D model. Another part is like knowing physics to a certain extent, because you got to know how the plastic was going to react and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then just having a kind of a 3D awareness of how things should look and measuring. And I think that part's where the scale modeling comes in. It's just, I'm huge into scale, as a lot of my videos have kind of been subject to, is like, okay, this truck isn't as this big, it should be this big type thing. And
yeah, I remember that from your Bruticus review, where you were talking about how the arms were just not at all in scale with anything else.
No, they're really not.
I mean, Bruticus is like it's the classic meme of like there's the one picture where it's like, oh, here's all of the pieces of Bruticus to scale, and like Blastoff would be gigantic.
Blastoff is like the size of the whole body or something, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Of all my scale pictures, that one is my absolute favorite, and I'm so glad somebody made that.
No, but scale, I know, is something you talk about a lot. You were talking about in your, I don't remember which review it was that you brought it up, but that Earthrise Starscream is actually in scale with some set of model cars that you have. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Actually, it's my model railroad. It was a Twitter post I made where I just was curious and decided to do some measuring because like the deluxe Seekers from way back in 2009 or whatever, they ended up being like 197 scale or something. And so when I got Earthrise, I was like, I'm just curious, what does this translate to? So I did the math, and it's like width-wise, it turns out to be 186.7, and length-wise, it's 187.5 in HO scale. So my model railroad and all the cars that I have for it are 187 scale. That's what they're designed to be. So I thought that was the coolest thing ever, that Earthrise Starscream is exactly 187 scale.
And that's interesting, because I know just from stuff with Hasbro and everything, scale was something that they thought of with Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus, and I know, or at least just from seeing some of the dioramas and everything, it seems like John Warden, the design manager, is very into like scale and probably has some background in doing a lot of like either railroading or anything else where it's like scale models. So I don't know that that's a happy accident, more so than a nice little Easter egg for people who do the math.
I don't know. I mean, like, as far as robot mode goes, which I'm pretty sure is the focus, it's exactly where it needs to be in terms of like Megatron and Optimus and everything. So I mean, that's great. I think it was a happy accident, but either way, I'm taking it. That's a win.
Yeah, like that's also part of where like a lot of my interest in 3D printing, and probably like the thing that'll push me over, is doing little like dioramas and whatnot. If I had the space to set up my collection that way, that's what I would have. I would have dioramas where hopefully, ideally 3D printed and whatnot stuff, that, because it's like, oh, like I want this garage to look a certain way, I'll just make it.
That's actually something I'm trying to venture out into, is like with my skits, a lot of them are like Arc and Nemesis base, and there's a reason. It's because I only have dioramas for Arc and Nemesis base. And I would like to venture out and make like an outdoor scene or a highway scene or a city scene or whatnot. Like in the past, when I've tried to do that, I've built it out of Lego and it looks shoddy. I'd like to upgrade and do something more. I just have to do research into how to do it.
Which then again, I think through the whole model railroading thing will probably come into play.
Absolutely.
So you have the skill set sort of built up, and you like, who would have thought it would have all come together for this kind of thing?
Just like a perfect storm of interests.
Apparently.
No, that's really something. So I think we've blasted through a lot of what we wanted to talk about. Zeus, I don't know if there's any final things.
I wanted to ask if there were any 3D printing projects that you wanted to talk about that you're working on. I know you mentioned earlier in the show that you're working on the smokestacks for Earthrise Optimus. Is there anything else that you have in development right now?
I've got a huge Sideswipe and Red Alert pack that I'm working. Like the smokestacks for Optimus is it's already done. There's an axe as well, but I'm going to show that off in the review. But I've got a huge Sideswipe pack. Like there's a spoiler that I wanted to do that's had to be done in 2 parts because I couldn't do one solid unit because it's too flimsy. There was the flare gun, the shoulder cannon. Someone else asked if I could do the doors that are seen in the Toon version of Red Alert that are G1 Toy inspired. So, I mean, that was kind of fun. I had to model the wheel from Siege Sideswipe, which has got that star pattern with the rivets in it. That was kind of a fun project. What else? I think that was... Oh, yeah, the jetpack. I did a jetpack for Sideswipe that both works for Sideswipe and for Earthrise Prime. I made sure the pegs worked dual compatibility. So once I get everything done and painted, I'm going to make a video about that and releasing it hopefully within the next month.
All right. That all sounds really cool. I think that's about it for this segment now.
So for the people who don't know where to find you on the internet, where can people check out your stuff?
So I have a Twitter, an Instagram, and a Facebook, and that's just my personal accounts. But the main thing is like where I post all the actual content is the YouTube, and that's just the Lazy Eyebrow. It used to be called the Lazy Eyebrow Reviewer, and if you search that up, it'll still bring you to my channel, and that's where I do all my stop motion reviews.
Cool. And then on both Thingiverse and Shapeways, people can search that up and find your stuff.
Oh, well. Yes, absolutely. There too. I forgot all about that.
And so you guys can get the Megatron fusion cannon that I've been freaking out about, because I saw that and I was just like, I'm not. I have to get this thing now. Damn it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I have red paint. I can paint the little nub, and then I'm good. Because
Right.
my main problem with Siege Megatron, I'm like, his fusion cannon doesn't look right.
No, it was just way off. The proportions were all janky, and the cannon was, and it was good for what it was, but
It was too bogged down by having to be involved in the transformation.
that's
I think is
exactly what it
is.
was. I keep saying it. I really wish somebody would make an MP36 that didn't transform that I could just animate with. That's all I want because I never, ever, ever will animate the thing transforming. Ever.
So then the fusion cannon you did can't fit into the tank mode, can it?
I have no idea because I've already modified my Megatron so much it doesn't have a tank mode anymore.
I might need to do some investigative work then, and let you know.
It probably, like, I mean, if someone wants to find out if it does, I would be very grateful because, again, I have no idea.
All right, I'm gonna look for a couple more things on Shapeways and probably do an order, and then I'll let you know.
Fair enough. Because Shapeways is expensive, man. Like,
Yeah, that's one thing where I've noticed because the last time I did a Shapeways order a while back, and prices have gotten up, and whatever material people were using that was almost like ABS, they took away.
well,
It was like the high polymer acrylate or something.
Something like
Okay.
that. Where it at the very least looked pretty comparable to ABS plastic, and then I guess on their end it was too expensive, so they're like, we have to take it out.
See, the thing about Shapeways is, like, they'll charge you $16 for that fusion. I think it's $16 for the fusion cannon, and I make $1. I had the choice to do how much markup I did, and, like, I still would like some payment for it. I designed it, but I after seeing how much they're charging, it's like $1. That's all I can muster. Like, you guys are already being paid enough by buying it, or charged enough, I should say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy. Well, on that note, Mr. the Lazy Eyebrow, it's been really cool talking to you. And don't worry, ladies and gentlemen at home, we will have him again on the main show. So if you tune into the full Steel City Bots episode this week, we'll be talking about recent Transformers news and whatever else we get on. Probably Star Wars The Clone Wars, because that seems to be the topic of conversation every week for the past 3 weeks.
We do talk a lot about Clone Wars.
Which I'll try to rein in, but who knows. But until next time, again, this has been Miguel from Nerdy Geek Talk. We'll catch you on the next one.